Hey guys, Evan from Gymaware. We're really happy to be supporting Coach DeMayo's podcast series once again. For those that don't know, our main product is Gymaware. It's the gold standard for measuring performance and implementing velocity-based training in the weight room. It excels in busy team training environments, and for many coaches, it's the Swiss Army knife of their toolkit. The Gymaware is used for athlete profiling, jump testing, fatigue monitoring, and for lifting within velocity zones. The system provides real-time feedback on individual targets, plus it's got an impressive range of leaderboards. Now, for those that are after a VBT device that's affordable, for the individual and for smaller groups, we recently released our new laser-based product, Flex. Importantly, it's been independently validated and proven to be both accurate and reliable. So if you're interested in either product, or you want to learn more about the velocity-based training and how it can help you as a coach, check out our website or contact us directly. So in the meantime, we trust you enjoy the Coach DeMayo's podcast, Outside the Rack.
The world of strength and conditioning is filled with some fantastic practitioners that are always searching for more. But more what? What are strength and conditioning coaches searching for to better their ability to prepare their athletes? Well, what about cutting-edge information? Or a place where you can find different opinions from forward-thinking coaches on what you're doing, how you're doing, and try to get feedback to be better for your athletes? Or what about a place where you'll find like-minded coaches that can provide solid coaching advice and career development for you as you progress through your career as a strength and conditioning professional? Well, this is exactly why we built the Strength Coach Network. You'll have access to exclusive monthly content on top of the sensationally active forum that we have where you can communicate with coaches all over the world to find those answers that you're looking for to help you be a better practitioner for your athletes. So make sure you hop on over to strengthcoachnetwork.com/CVASPS, that's strengthcoachnetwork.com/CVASPS, and get your 48-hour trial for only $1. I look forward to seeing you in the Strength Coach Network. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the 71st episode of Outside the Rack, brought to you by Kinetic Performance, the makers of Gymaware. In this show, we're just going to try to dive a little deeper into the minds of the top practitioners in the world of sport performance to learn a little bit more about who they actually are and how they got to where they are today. Today, we are joined by the Director of Applied Sports Science at the University of Kentucky, Dr. Chris Morris. Doc, thanks for spending the time with us today, man.
I appreciate it, Jay. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, it's great to chop it up. It's great to see you. It's always great to catch up a bit. Super glad you're doing well, man, and everything's good out there in Lexington. But before we get going too far, man, who is Dr. Morris?
Yeah, I mean, it's former athlete, fell in love with just sport in general. Went to UK, walked on as a punter, kicker, should have been a tight end. 3 injuries there, graduated with a bachelor's degree in business, hated business, went back to school, decided to figure out why I got hurt in the first place, and then got my master's and PhD in ex-phys. There I met my wife, who was in dental school. She's now an orthodontist here in Lexington, and we had our first child this year. As bad as 2020 has been, we welcomed our little daughter, 10-month-old Maddie, into the world. And, even as bad as this year has been for a lot of people, there's silver linings for us. And I got to spend a lot of time with her in the quarantine phase in the spring when I would have never had that opportunity. So, and it really helped kind of create that bonding opportunity for me. But yeah, man, just, family guy now and living my life at UK, my alma mater, and having a good time.
That's awesome, man. It's hard to believe. It was February, right?
Maddie came in January.
Oh.
Yeah, January. So she was supposed to be a February baby, and then she came 4 weeks early, which perfect timing. The ironic thing is we were at the bowl game, literally had just landed from our bowl game. My wife was like, I don't feel good, like something's a little off. And we just happened to check her blood pressure, and we were in the hospital that night. We didn't deliver that night. They sent us home, which was awesome because it gave me a few days. I had to finish the nursery and things, and it's funny because I felt like Maddie knew that I had 2 weeks before I had to go back to work because of football we were off, and she came, and I was able to spend those couple weeks with my wife, and so a little early, but yeah, she's doing great.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And As a guy who's done enough digging to change his first name, I'm excited to hear the first one.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind, describe a learning situation that brought about an epiphany in your career.
Yeah. No. So, like I said, I went and got my master's at UK with the idea that I wanted to be a strength coach. I wanted to get into performance. And then I realized, with strength and conditioning, and my wife was going to be an orthodontist, and realized that she couldn't be the only one to have a doctor in front of her name. So I was like, I'll go ahead and get my PhD. We'll both be miserable together. So I had the opportunity. So, I was already master's, CSCS, all that good stuff. I was going to be a strength coach, but I had the opportunity when, Erik came to Kentucky and brought Omegawave with them. And having the opportunity, I felt like I caught lightning in a bottle there, because Omegawave was just recently just kind of coming up in the US. No one really knew about it. Studying Omegawave as a strength coach who thought he knew everything was like the biggest mind-blowing experience for me. Only from when I consider, like, if you look at like the principles behind Omegawave, so obviously general adaptation syndrome and cellular, who's probably by far my favorite researcher, Anakin's functional systems theory, and then when you talk about Bevsky and biological cybernetics. But if we think about what Cellier did, and people can be really critical of his work, especially in strength and conditioning, all he did in animals, it doesn't count, it's not strength and conditioning. But if you just step back and look what he really did, all this, he was saying that the body has a very systematic response to a non-specific stress. No matter what the stress is, the body is going to respond accordingly. And so if you keep fast forwarding through that, my thought process, well, then every time the body deviates from homeostasis or there is a stress, we're using something to compensate for it. And that's when the first idea that we have a gas tank kind of came about. Like, we have a limited supply of resources to adapt. So I was like, oh, epiphany. So if I can reduce all these areas of stress and optimize blood glucose and oxygen delivery and academic stress and all these things, then theoretically in the weight room I can raise the level of stress and have a better adaptive response. And that was like mind-blowing for me, because I was like, why aren't we looking for meditation and all these things that we know that are reducing stress, because we can make better athletes. Well, it wasn't until I got into functional systems theory that realized how big the brain plays a role in regulating stress. So if we think about functional systems, and I think about the athletes that come in, because at that point we had already been seeing like a lot of Omegawaves from all these different backgrounds. And so we would see kids that come in with just red line every day, red line every day, every day, every day. And I was like, what are they doing outside this facility? They're always in the state of stress. And what I realized was, and in studying functional systems, is that's 18 years that we don't know about this kid. We kind of know about their background, but we really don't know. So you dig a little bit deeper, and we find out that this kid doesn't come from a great situation. This kid, his family is depending on them getting to the NFL so they can support him. So not only is he getting stressed here in the weight room, but then he's also dealing with the family and the crushing pressure. And that was put into place many, 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 many years ago today, or leading up to that day. Now, what is kind of scary as a new parent, as I start to think about it, is like every experience that I, allow Maddie to be in, that is basically shaping how she's going to behave and adapt later on as an adult. It's kind of scary as a parent, because every situation that she's presented with is ultimately going to shape her behavior when she becomes an adult. So you're looking at all these athletes, and it's like, man, there's so many backgrounds here, and you're trying to figure out, like, why are these kids stressing? Who's adapting? Who's not adapting? And realizing that they all have this one gas tank, and our job as strength coaches not only to make them bigger, faster, stronger, but how can we help on the other side with the recovery piece? And we always thought about recovery as like, oh, you eat and you sleep. Yeah, those are the easy things. But if you think about, like, all right, how do we help them do better in school? How do we help them be more grateful? How do we help them become better people? Because ultimately, happier people, more grateful people, people that take care of the schoolwork, have less stress, and end up being better athletes. And so, just my work with Omegawave, I know I went in like 5,000 different circles there, but like just knowing that one, with Cellier's work, we have a gas tank and that we can run through that gas tank, and everything that deviates homeostasis pulls from that. And then on the flip side is we have this central component with the brain that's controlling all that stuff. And oftentimes our biggest stressor is our own mind. Whether that's, we talk about like, oh, is that person, talking bad about me, or that coach doesn't like me, or that we put like these perceptions in our head of like these stressful situations that don't really exist. And those things actually end up being more chronically stressors than physical training and, things that we normally think about as being bad stress.
Oftentimes, our biggest stressor is our own mind.
Yes. And I find that true myself too, because it's,
totally.
and especially with social media and the election and everything, it's crazy how, regardless, and we won't get into the political side of things, but, you have a friend that you've been friends with forever, like good friends, and they post something that's of the opposing political party, and it triggers you. Like you kind of get mad, like, why am I friends with this person? And, if you think about like evolutionarily wise, like we used to trigger those systems when we were getting chased by lions, not when someone disagrees with us on social media. And so like you think about like all these things that are kind of, again, and I have to remind myself, I was like, was that worth, losing maybe, that rep I did in the gym today? Like that just pulled away from my ability to adapt for my workout. Was that worth? I mean, they're a great friend to me, like, the way they treat me, but because something triggered me on like, so I have to remind myself a lot of times that, they weren't attacking me. They were just had a view about our current president or our new president that's going to be about that I didn't agree with. That wasn't a personal attack on me, and it doesn't, it's not going to, affect my life in any way. But people, you're starting to see this disturbing trend of people stressing about things that really have no impact on them whatsoever.
No, a trillion percent. And I think that just to kind of go back to the strength and conditioning aspect of it, like the biggest stressors in our own mind is simply the reason why, like what we were talking about before we got going, when people sit here and they look at whatever reading or score you're taking, and they automatically make a decision about what a kid or an athlete or a person is going to do without understanding who that person is and talking to them. Because if you're stressed out, the one thing you might have to do is go lift heavy.
Yep.
Or you're going to trip out even more. And it's like going back to it, it's like, oh, like they're, stuck in sympathetic overreaching, so they got to go sit in the warm tub and relax. But what if they don't like water? Like, why are you going to put them in a tub? Yep. Like, that's brilliant. I think that's one of the things too that like, I don't think I could have said it in, that few words and be as well stated, but it's like, that's probably one of the biggest takeaways I've had, with the tech too, is it's just like, you got to chill and take a step back and be like,
yeah. And sometimes like this statement, I've come to find out that ignorance is bliss, especially the more I know about how the brain works and how stress works. And I'm sitting here looking at my daughter, and it's just like, all right, she's got her princess playhouse, and she has all the things that she needs. And, if I, play ball with her, and what outcome is that going to have of little, like, my mind goes nonstop when I look at her and be like, within 2 years, 85% of her brain is going to be developed, but it's the 15% after that becomes the most important, with the frontal cortex, which handles emotion, and the amygdala, which they kind of counteract each other. It's like, okay, when something triggers you, when something, the amygdala, which was our stress center, it's the frontal cortex that basically says, hey, calm down, you're being irrational. There's no need to get the sympathetic nervous system activated. And what you see is like children we're not in a abusive situation, but you see like studies of like children that grew up in abusive situations have very developed amygdalas and undeveloped frontal cortex. So as adults, they become more likely to be abusive because this thing's firing all the time without having this, other side of it. So I'm scared knowing this stuff, and it's like, all right, what kind of environment does Maddie need to be in? And like, all right, now I got to work on motor development. Like, what am I going to do today? She's got to overcome adversity, or do I need to let her fall? And so she doesn't it's okay to get hurt, but don't freak out. Like, these are all and that's why I'm like, man, ignorance is bliss. Like, if I wasn't sitting here freaking, like, so there's my mind, right? Like, I'm sitting here stressing about this, and pulling away from resources. It's just, it's crazy, even though that these things, like you have a hard time kind of reining it in and controlling it.
Meanwhile, our parents would have just been like, "You're fine, rub some dirt on it."
Exactly. Yeah. That's why I kind of get into now is just, and that's the thing I keep telling my wife is like, Maddie falls, she's going to be hurt, but we have to try to remain calm, because if we get like kind of anxious, then the child is going to get anxious. I read too much. I shouldn't read that much into it, but it's true. There's certain things I want my daughter to be in life, and the way that I see our current, culture, and if this election has taught us anything, is I called it lessons. Like, I write them down. I was like, lessons for my daughter. I was like, I want my daughter to be able to argue constructively and with logic without becoming emotional.
Today?
So that's what I mean. Like, that's a huge task, right? Because if the election showed you anything, 50% of the people are going to disagree with you. And you're not going to change their mind, because, and in fairness, like, their experiences have shaped their values, and their values are what they're going to hold to. So, and I have no problem saying this, like, I'm very much against abortion. And I know a lot of people, and I respect everyone. The reason why is because, I had a moment when we tried so hard for Maddie. And, when we're in the doctor's office and they did the ultrasound for the first time, like, they said, oh, there's little Maddie, this 6-week-old baby. And you saw this little flicker, right? And he's like, that's her heartbeat. And like, for me, that struck me as like, that's the same heartbeat that's in that girl's chest today. And like, for me, like, that value, no matter what side of the fence you're on, if you're pro-life or pro-choice, like, those pro-choice people have a reason for that value statement. Like, arguing with them is only going to create stress between that person and you. And it's okay to disagree. It doesn't make them any less of a person. Judge them by their character, not by their, how they feel about certain controversial subjects. So, but sorry, I got a little emotional with the heartbeat thing, but but that's how values are, right? We're hold to our values. So, when people say, oh, how can you vote for that person? I was like, well, I'm really for this, really, is my thing. Whether I like the person that I get to vote for, that's not I don't have a choice there. So,
I hear you.
But yeah, it's that the election and Maddie in 2020, and just kind of viewing the world and knowing I know it, just, there's certain things I want Maddie to be, and I understand that these early years are really critical. So,
well, at the end of the day, these snake people that are running this experiment on all of us, or whatever they are, the lizard people, whatever that stupid conspiracy theory is, they're just going to be like, look at these two idiots talking about exercise on the internet.
and the crazy thing is, there's probably some conspiracy theories that are actually true, and we just have no clue. That goes back to like, ignorance is bliss.
Ignorance is bliss there, though, bud. I mean, for sure.
Maybe we're living in, saying ignorance truly is bliss, maybe, who knows? I've just seen too many people with this election, like, lose friendships, and I have to. It's so easy now, right? Because we can just click unfollow, right? So what happens is we have an environment where we can just shield ourselves from anything that might potentially like disturb us. We create safe spaces on colleges. We can unfollow people, but in reality, we have to have a healthy amount of adversity to learn how to cope and deal with these things. So that's kind of the flip side, is like with Maddie, it's like, I want her to be challenged. Like if I, prepare the child for the road, not the road for the child. Like if she never has grown up with any adversity, when she gets out as an adult and someone challenges her, she's going to it's going to activate the amygdala. She's going to freak out. She's going to get emotional. So it's like, just like the body, when we train, we have to have damage to have growth, and has to come back stronger. We have to have these kind of, controversial adversity experiences in our life that we can adapt and grow from, becoming anti-fragile.
No doubt. No doubt. But listen, Doc, we talked a little bit about this one before. And as a guy who digs and a guy who's looking into things in different ways than we ever thought we would 10 years ago when we started down all these rabbit holes. If Chris Morris could ask one question and he knows he's going to get the answer to it, what would that question be and why?
Yeah, that's gosh. Like I said, you could immediately go to the God questions. Why did you let sin into the world? Like you could have stopped it, all these things, but that's not going to help me much on my time here on earth. So, given everything that I talked about, and like how dangerous the mind can be and how often our biggest stress is our own mind, how do you become a complete master of your own mind? So it's a level of consciousness that, to say, it's almost like, all right, I can feel the stress. I could feel the amygdala activating it. And part of that is like, we kind of already know some of those answers, but it's like the Buddhist kind of meditation transcendental thing. But, it's, how do we tame the mind? How do you tame the mind? Because it's always going, right? And the more that I look into these anti-agings and what ages us in stress, it's typically, it starts up here. Everything that happens the neck down is 100% a product of how healthy your brain is. And we kind of look at all the studies on gratitude and how that helps, and compassion and meditation, and it's all centered around the structures in the brain. So I really do, like, if someone could come down and just give me the blueprint, like, Chris, this is what you need to do to become a master of your own mind. I mean, think about like the life that you could have, not from just, I'd be yoked in the weight room. That would be awesome, right? All my resources go into the gym. That's where I'd spend it. But just like the quality with your family and your daughter and your sons, and, the downstream effects of that, I think would be profound. But but like I said, that's just because that epiphany moment, and knowing that I have a gas tank, and I know that my brain is basically dictating everything in my behavior in my body. If you can control that and you could teach that to people, think about how many people you could help. Like, think about how many athletes you can help. So I know that's it's kind of like we know some of those answers, but I don't feel like we do know the answer. Like, how do you actually become a master of your own mind?
I dig that, man, because I almost wonder too if that would take the governor off, right, and let you even tap into more of it.
Yeah, I do. I mean, we talk about, with the brain, and we talk about all its functions and how it dictates behavior, and it's just, I don't know. I keep just going back to like having complete control, and it's almost like it is Buddhist, man. I can't think of, and I'm not Buddhist by any means, but like the whole thought process, the transcendental, like seeing the world in a different kind of view and a lens, and how much happier that can kind of make people. But yeah, and maybe it does. Maybe it's like limitless. Maybe it unlocks areas of the brain that are under functioning, because at the end of the day, like, remember, the brain takes up a decent amount of your whole body energy just to function. and we start talking about like books like Thinking Fast and Slow and how the brain has to preserve energy. And, if we can preserve energy, and it goes back to that gas tank. It's like the gas tank of the brain. Like if I could direct all that energy into different components, I feel like, you could have a much better, outcome.
Well, and you think of it too, right? That it's the two aspects of the brain, or the devil and the angel on your shoulder, more or less. So if they don't fight as much, how much more energy do you have to tap into what's left?
Right.
Does it now like move that governor back from 15% to 25%, and all of a sudden, like we can actually do trigonometry without a calculator.
Exactly. When we think about that, like that increase in brain function, but just the amount of clarity you get. And if you study like all the high performers, like what's the number one thing? If you read all these books on high performance habits and high performance life and all this stuff, they always talk about the number one thing, clarity. Like think about like just having ultimate clarity in your purpose, your vision, just like your brain, no fog, no stress, no just I mean, I don't know. It seems like nirvana and heaven. Maybe that's what heaven is. I don't know.
I don't know, man, but I think that that's a pretty rad question. I think too that kind of ties in pretty good with the first one. Like the whole, it runs it all, and diving down that first time when, I don't know if Erik, when he went up there, if they still had the suction cup leads and the clamps for the wrists and the ankles on the Omegawave. And the first time you sit there and you look at it and you're watching the EKG, and it's like, all right, what am I diving into?
Yep. Even when I first started, I'm like what is this? Like, what am I doing? Like it, but the biggest blessing that I had is we had so many guys that tested, and you got to hear so much of their backgrounds, and then things just started making sense, right? The guy that was sympathetically dominant, who had a poor home life, his sympathetic nervous system, he always was engaged, right? And his brake never got, pushed in. So what ends up happening to that kid, almost all of my sympathetic dominant kids that I've have had catastrophic injuries. High ankle sprain that never recovered. So the syndesmosis joint basically calcified. It was a maladaptation, right? So if I don't recover, the body's like, well, I got to do something with this injury. So I'm basically just going to lock it down. So think about a guy that is a skill position that can't now change directions because it's so painful that syndesmosis joint doesn't work. Or the guy that's so sympathetically dominant that, is running down the field and tears his ACL, no contact, just running. The amount of fatigue, like it's just, I've never seen a good situation. It always begs the question, should we even be training the muscles, or do we need to be training the mind right now? Like we need to fix the mind before we can fix anything downstream. So it's like, if I can't get the parasympathetic nervous system, and then that's hard. Like when I try to explain it to a strength coach, when they're like, what do we do with this kid? I'm like, he needs to be meditating. He needs to be floating. He needs to be, maybe therapy, HRV biofeedback, heart rate coherence. Like we need to start just stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system activity, because otherwise it's like, he's never going to recover from training. So what's the point? And it's a really hard concept, like to think about. It's like, well, he's got to train. He's an athlete. Yeah, but like, all right, maybe have him work up, but keep his volume super low. If he has to train, then all right, then we'll keep the intensity and we'll try to maintain what he has. But we got to fix this, because otherwise, I've seen it lead to disastrous results. So, but yeah, that's it's tough, right? We don't think about it that way. We're not taught that way. I mean, how many strength coaches? And I look at our curriculums. It's we learn methods, but we don't learn the principles, the physiological underpinnings behind those methods. All right, this is linear periodization. This is block periodization. It's all rooted in stimulus, compensation, supercompensation, Cellier, but we don't really appreciate that. I really don't. I think we talk about it. It's like, oh, this is what this curve looks like, and it came from Cellier because this is what his general adaptation curve looked like, and there's the similarities. All right, we're moving on. this is how you snatch. So, you know,
Perfect. Yes. It's like, oh yeah, that looks the same. And here's the double knee bend.
exactly.
Yeah.
Let's learn these methods. And so often I get these kids in my class and I start talking about these things and I'm like, could you literally, all right, write out your program. I want you to tell me everything that's adapting in this program. Like, what are the changes that you're making? And I'd say 90% of them can't tell me. And it's concerning. And I'm like, so what we're teaching these kids are a bunch of methods, and we're not really diving into the principles, which are founded in physiology. More so, like to me, I was like, if I've had this epiphany of, oh gosh, there's other stressors that are going to impact my weight room session outside the weight room, and that stress is global, like you would have a greater appreciation for how you program. I don't know. That maybe that's just me. But
I think people who have been fortunate enough to trip and fall down that rabbit hole, because I don't think anybody goes into it willingly, like initially. I think that a lot of us look at it differently, and it's like it really has done that for me too. Is it's just like, because think about this too, right? So like you're asking undergrads this. When you were an undergrad, and then we'll get to the third one after this, but when you were an undergrad, could you have ever imagined, well, I mean, you were a business major, so that's not really fair. But when you were an undergrad playing football and they were telling you, yeah, but you're probably the biggest impact your training's having right now is on your immune system. You would have looked at the guy in the face and been like, you're out of your skull. What are you talking about? Do you see these cameras? Do you see these guns? That's what it's having the effect on. It's like,
yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. And that's a tough thing for these kids to get their heads wrapped around too. Like even the athletes, it's like, oh, I tested poor. Well, what does that mean? Like how's that going to affect my training? Like how, like they don't make that connection. And part of that's on us is, you know, we have to get them to buy into it, but it's a very, it's a complex thought, like to understand how my heart is telling me like basically what I can adapt to today. And, you know, and then you get into functional systems theory. I mean, I read that paper probably like 25 times maybe before I really even started to somewhat understand it. But once you understand it, it's incredible how you think about the world and you think about other people and their experiences and their behavior. And so, sorry, I'm going down that rabbit hole again, but yeah.
I love it. I think that's awesome, man. I think that this is stuff that more and more people hopefully are starting to catch on to. But listen, Doc, when we get you out here on the third one, man, like running around, teaching, working with all the kids at UK, doing all this stuff, eventually you got to come back to neutral, brother. So what's Chris Morris's escape?
So, you know, it's one thing, like every night when well, at least when it was warm, like my wife and I, we would take Maddie out and we go for a walk. We have a big 120-pound German Shepherd, and it wasn't like training. It was probably we might be walking 3.5 miles an hour, but it was just a chance for us to book. Because I mean, she's in clinic all day. I'm at UK all day. We don't get to see Maddie. I mean, we have a nanny, and then so it's an opportunity for us to be with Maddie, but also talk about our day. And for us, sometimes it helps us because we bounce things off of each other. It's like, hey, this thing kind of like, you know, upset me, or like, hey, this thing was like really tough. And then, you know, we're very much polar opposites. She's very type A, I'm very type A or B. And so we just kind of feed off each other's energy. Like, you know, she's ramped up, I bring her down. Like, I'm really kind of like lax about it. She brings me up. And, you know, and it's not like it's a long way. I mean, we might walk a mile or two, but we know that every day we're going to have an opportunity to talk uninterrupted about whatever we want. And, you know, that people will say the weight room. Yeah, absolutely. The weight room is an escape. You know, I love to lift weights, but, you know, there's nothing more that you get out of just being with your family and the gratitude that you get no matter what happened that day. you're going to come home, you're going to have your wife, you're going to have your daughter. And that's what matters. So it just allows me to kind of anchor myself back every day to what actually is important.
Dig it, man. That's awesome. Doc, so grateful for your time, man. Truly appreciate you spending the time with us today. And, always great to chop it up, man. Truly appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man. We'll be in touch real soon, brother. Cheers.
That's good. Thanks, Jay.